So today we're going to talk about the childhood of Hitler, and I think the best place to start is to like understand his grandparents, and that's also like they're also the reason why some people believe that Hitler was a Jew, right? Why do people believe that?
They believe that because they don't know what happened with his grandparents, and they do know what they said in the 20s, and that's about 40, 50 years later. And in the 20s, the socialist journalists used to attack Hitler on every point they could make. For instance, when he did certain things on a financial basis, they thought could be acting like a Jew or something, they would attack him with that. Not that they meant it, but they said it to hurt him. You're not consequent in what you say. You're not doing what you said, and you like the ones you hate. And that's what he did. And then they looked back, and then they discovered that in the past, it's not sure if Maria Anna Schicklgruber, his grandmother, had a child with Georg Hitler, the supposed father of the grandfather of Adolf Hitler. And then they started digging into that, finding stuff that isn't true. And now we know that most of the things they found out wasn't quite accurate.
Hmm. So who do they believe that their grandfather actually is, or do they have no clue?
I think it's the one they most of the time say it is. It is Georg Hitler, and I didn't understand very well at first why they said it, but then I investigated it for my book, The Young Hitler, and I found out that together with another book that was quite recently published in Austria, based on new letters of the father of Hitler. Well, I found out that there isn't really a discussion about who is the father. Yeah, there is a discussion because his name was not on the birth certificate. So there is a problem there. And but in the house where Maria Anna, the grandmother of Adolf Hitler, used to live with a guy named Georg Hitler, together with her father, and used to live there for years. So it's very likely that this guy was the father of Alois Hitler, the father of Adolf.
Yeah, that seems like the most likely option. And back then, Hitler was spelled differently, right?
Yes, yes. Apart from the Schicklgruber thing, we talked about that once, but Hitler came in a different spelling of variants. You had these guys were called Hitler with a D and an L, and Hitler is of course with an I and a T and an L. But there are also variants in the neighborhood. You spell with a U with a umlaut on it. And it means something like small farm, a small a guy that has sheep, like a farmer, but a small one. So that's what it meant.
And is it true that Hitler was happy that his name was spelled wrong?
Yes, because he found it to be it sounded better, a little harsh. I don't know. Hitler is softer, and he was glad with it, and he was very glad that he wasn't called Schicklgruber.
Yeah, no, that's the worst catchphrase. Like you can't remember it. Too many
No, no,
letters.
only in a funny series or something.
Exactly. So, where was Hitler born and what were his parents like?
Yes, Hitler was born in Braunau am Inn. That's a city on the border of Austria and Germany. And his father was Alois Hitler. It's Alois Hitler Senior because his son was also from his second marriage was also called Alois and Clara Pölzl. He went to Braunau am Inn because there was a border and he could work there. So and they worked in that he worked in that city, and he met there his first wife and his second wife. He had 3 children with his second wife, and then she got sick, and then Clara, an old neighbor of his, but much younger, came to help him with inside the house when he was working. She cleaned up, and well, he couldn't take his hands off of her. Or how do you say it?
Mm-hmm.
They fell in love, and his wife was sick, so I believe they had a relationship before his second wife.
Okay, okay. And the weird thing is that they were also relatives, right?
They were relatives, yes. The families that are living next to each other in the house where there's a moment when his father Georg is alone. His wife has died, and he's alone. So he sends Alois to his brother, and he has a farm, and the farm next to it is owned by family, and but there is Clara growing up, but there's a big age difference between the two,
Mm-hmm.
so they are family,
So like family, like blood family.
like nephew and niece.
So that means that Hitler is also created out of incest, right?
Well, maybe if you look back in a lot of countries in a lot of countries in Europe. That was often the case. When you have a lot of small towns, we still have them nowadays. So it's not so very strange. You don't want to do it too many times, but they were family. And I believe, yeah, maybe you could say Adolf was quite crazy. Maybe it comes from
Maybe it comes
breeding.
from.
I don't know. I don't know.
And the Hitler's mom, because what I read in your book is that she gave him a lot of attention and she kind of started ignoring her other children, right? Because they weren't really her kids; they were like staff kids, you could
Yes.
say.
Yeah, it's a terrible story. In fact, she had 3 children before Hitler came, and they all died. But there were 2 other children from the other marriage she had to deal with. They were much older, and when Hitler was born, she gave him a lot of attention, of course. And then Alois, the half brother of Adolf, yeah, well, um, he didn't get the attention she gave her own son. Maybe it's you can understand that because she had no, children that died, so she wanted to protect him, and he was young, and the other 2 were older.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it happened. That's what they describe.
And what did the father of Hitler do? Like, what was his job?
His job was he worked on the border. He was a border guard or a toll collector, and that's why he had to move a lot. He traveled, and but after he stopped working for the government. He still moved a lot, so maybe it was
Mm.
in his blood.
Yeah, because I think I've got the list here. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think Hitler moved like 9 times.
Yes, if you counted all, I don't know, but it might be you counted some places as double or triple,
But like,
because within the places he moved also. Well, yes, that's true. And every place has its own drowning story about Hitler.
yeah.
Hitler drowned about 27 times. No, I'm at no. It's about 5 times.
Uh,
But they can't all be true.
yeah, that's something really fascinating because what you see in Hitler's life is that there's so many stories of him drowning. Like, why is that something that keeps on reoccurring?
I don't know. I think it's a bit the same as the story about his grandparents or his ancestors. Somebody hears something, and then they dive into history or they make things up. And one of the stories that's very typical is the one in Passau, beautiful little city between three rivers that come together there. And they live on one of the houses, and they live in two houses again. But one of the houses is near the river, and Adolf was playing there. As the story goes, and he falls into the river. It's freezing. There's ice on the river, but it's a river, so it's not ice where you can depend on. So, and there's another guy, still a young guy. Hitler is 4 or 5 at that time. That rescues him, and it could be true, but the story, when you look it up in the papers, it doesn't add up. There is no mentioning of names, and the story in Passau is about Adolf Hitler, a famous guy, and he was saved by a guy that became a famous organ player in the church of Passau. So he was famous there too. And then you start to think, well, when it's not in the paper, it must be about other boys, and they heard about Hitler talking about that he almost drowned one time. They probably said, that's the story. It must have been in Passau.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's often how like fake stories go. That's how they often like start. Because Passau, that's the second place he lived there, right?
Yes, yeah, Passau, yeah. Yeah, it's a place where it's also near the border. So his father is moving to, because he has to work there. He's still very young. His father is a bee, has also bees, and he has no room in his house. So he has another place where I traveled around. So I went to look it up, and there he could hold the bees, and he walked towards that. And then he came back. So he's still working in that time.
And was there any moment in Hitler's youth where he kind of felt Austrian too, instead of like completely German?
I don't think he felt like a German when he was a child. I don't know if he ever. He felt like Austrian nationalist, and that means that he saw himself as a German Austrian, and Austria used to be a large. They had a Kaiser.
Emperor?
How do you call it in England?
An emperor?
In English. There was several countries were part of that large country, and you had Czechoslovakia. They were not German, and Hitler later said that the Germans always were the ones who carried culture on a different level, made buildings and castles, and were politically better equipped at that time. And there was a party that belonged to that. So they thought the German Austrians should be the boss of that large empire.
Okay, I see. And after that, he moved again. What was the next spot where he moved at?
Yes, from Passau, there's not so much known about Passau because he was very young, and that's still the case when he goes to Urfa. Urfa is interesting because we didn't know. We didn't know he went to Urfa until the book Hitler's Father. It's called I'm saying it in English, but Hitler's Vater is this. I mean in German. But there are two houses where he lived, and there was a story because historians couldn't make out what happened. There is time between Passau and Haveld. Haveld is where his father bought a farm later, and there's time missing. So one of them said, well, maybe Hitler and his dad already went to the farm he bought, and the family stayed in Passau. We don't know until this guy found papers in the documents in Urfa, in Linz, where two addresses were mentioned. And it's interesting because one of the houses was owned by a Jew. And probably one of the historians, maybe not even Hitler himself, has not spoken about it when he found it. But it was still there, so everybody could find it, but they never sought for it. So, but why they didn't talk about it is maybe clear, because he was a rich guy with a lot of houses,
Mm.
and they rented one.
Yeah, I can understand if you didn't want to talk about it. Because how old was Hitler at that moment? Like, he must have been like 3, right? Something like that. 3, 4.
Well, yeah, when he was in Urfa, he was a little bit older. I think moving from Urfa, he was 6. So you could say 4 or 5. Yes, he didn't know much about that. But later, Urfa is across the river from Linz. So it's he came there a lot. He knew the place. He even lived there with his mother. So and his wanted to be the girl he very much liked lived in Urfa too. But that's when he is older. He is 15, 16.
Yes, because after that he moves to Hafeld. Do I say
Yeah,
that right?
yeah,
Hafeld?
Haveld. Yeah, yes, his father buys a farm.
Yeah, that's such a random thing to do, especially
Yeah,
because he
but
used.
yes, I thought so too. You're totally right. But again, this guy with this book had letters, and he knew a lot about the father, Alois, and he had bees. He kept bees, and he was very interested in farming. So he always bought a magazine about farming. He knew a lot about it, but he knew it in theory, not in practice. He wasn't a farmer, but he knew how to talk about it. Maybe Hitler has something about it, something from him. He could also talk a lot of, said a lot of things about a lot of things he didn't know much about.
Yeah, like war
Um,
strategy. Like, he knew the theory about it, but he wasn't able to like do it himself.
that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You say it better, but that's what happened. And he bought a farm, and they went to live there. He had in fact, they had a good time. Hitler could walk around, was a bit older. He could play in he almost drowned in the small river. I've seen it. It's very small, so I don't know how he could drown there, but he did
Mm-hmm.
for the 5th time now. But and that's well, it's interesting because he couldn't do it, his father, and but it's an interesting place because there Hitler goes to school for the first time, not in Haveld, but in a little place further about let's say 4 kilometers away. Half an hour walking from the farm is a school in Fischerham. It's still there. It's a very nice school. When you're in the neighborhood, you should look it up. It's very interesting. There's a sign on it that says that warns about what happened, but that he went to school there. It's a very small, tiny school, but he does very well at school. His sister Angela, his half sister from the other marriage, brings him there. She's older, and they walk to go to school together. Have a great time there.
And do we know anything about if Hitler liked farming?
I think he what we assume is that he liked to be there because he was free and he could maybe he did a little work on the farm. He could play rough games you do when you're living on the country. So I think so.
And
There's not a lot to say that we really know, but we know he did well at school too.
yeah, because that was my next question about school, like especially like the that era, like the start of his school time. Do we know anything about that? Like, did any teachers write anything down about what was like young Hitler like at
Yes,
school?
yeah, they for instance, the remark that he was always brought to school or going to school together with his sister, we know from one of the teachers who wrote it. And then the rest of what we know is all his report cards, the grades he got, and that's about. I think he's in this school for about 2 years, and it's what we also know is that it's um, uh, a small school, um, probably with not a lot of quality of teaching. It was meant for boys, sons of farmers who didn't go to school, who took over the farm, who worked a lot. And Hitler, when they moved again, he came to another school. Then he had to do stuff again. So uh, the level of the school was not very high.
And eventually the farm it goes bankrupt, right? Or
Yes, it got bankrupt. Yes, yes, yeah.
and what
Uh,
does the dad do? What's the next
uh,
move?
well, he's already retired, so he has a pension. He doesn't have to make a lot of money because he can live from it, and he actually um, buys the best house they ever had, I think. Hitler still has, by the way, his little brother of 4 years old and his little sister of 2 years old. When they move to Leonding, and that's a small village. It's quite large and a lot larger now. It's joined to almost joined to Linz today, and Linz is the second city of Austria. Uh, so that they have a house, they have a garden, they have his beast can be around his house. I believe they have a cow or some goats there. There's a room enough, and Adolf Hitler is about 10 when they come there. He plays a lot, goes to school there, also does good there in school, in the primary school it is. And it's a great house.
And this is also the location where the story is told that Hitler started shooting chickens, right? Or something.
Yeah, that's a great story. He told it himself, I believe, but his father was very angry with him. Maybe he liked it a little too, but there was a neighbor, a woman that had a chicken, and she always ran through their garden. Maybe there was no fence or something, and but they didn't like it because it became messy in the garden. And then Hitler said he took the weapon of his father and he shot at the chicken. Well, it's very funny, but I don't know. It's a good story.
I mean, it shows like that he was already like a little crazy even as like a kid.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe yes. Let's say it's true. So it says something about him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
don't know. I believe he told it himself, and that his father got very angry with him because he shouldn't take the rifle.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. And
Yes.
what was life like for the father at that moment? Because I can imagine his farm went bankrupt, and
Mhm.
Hitler also wrote that his dad used to be an alcoholic, right?
Yes, that's what they say about him. Now he doesn't say that his dad was an alcoholic, but he tells story about a family in Mein Kampf that is about a father coming home, being abusive to the kids, and that maybe some people, intelligent people, I believe even Ian Kershaw says that it might be about his own dad, that he was drunk coming home. But other people say, I don't know exactly what it is, but other people say he was abusive. He did. Hitler got beaten a lot because he was difficult, maybe. But and Hitler loved his mother, but he didn't love his father. Did he said so? His sister also said that Hitler got a lot of beatings from his father. So was he drunk or did he have a temperament? Maybe both. He was in the pub a lot in that time also, but you must say that he was also interested in politics. And that's also the place where you come together to talk about politics and to meet people. And he had his pension, so he had always done his work properly. Friends of him who came in his home said he did good. He wasn't a terrible guy, but well, maybe it's not like we do it today. We don't. We try not to hit our children. I think.
No, we try.
We try. We try. Yeah. Well, you don't know if everyone succeeds in it.
Yeah, exactly. And do we know anything about if Hitler had like the same political views as his dad?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. His dad was actually a guy that was very much about that German element of Austria. He thought they were actually blood brothers with the Germans, which is maybe is right. Shouldn't matter that much, but uh, that's what he said, and what Adolf Hitler took over from him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's correct. But the alcohol is also believed to be it was always believed to be the cause of his death. Also, when they live in this house, his father in the morning goes to the bar. Well, when someone tells me that, I think, well, is that a good idea? And is the bar already open? Why the sofa where he died on is still there? I've sat on it. He goes to the bar and then he dies quite quickly. So he didn't have the time to get drunk or something. It happens very quickly. And again, the guy from the recent book that investigated a lot of papers says has a lot of letters he wrote to friends, and he tells about feeling and not feeling well, being sick. He has been sick before that, and then this writer says he smoked a lot. When you're a beekeeper, you have a large pipe and you smoke a lot. He really smoked from the morning until the evening. The way they describe how he died made the writer think that he might have had lung cancer and a lung bleeding at that moment. And then he asked around for how fast does it go? You can die very quickly then. So probably he had that and died on the spot. And so if he was an alcoholic or not, let's leave it there. But he probably, I think it's very convincing. He probably died of his cancer because he was ill already.
And do we know anything about the reaction of Hitler when his dad passed?
Sometimes he went to the bar to take him from there to take him home. He said he was sad, I believe, but he was also relieved because at that time he had to go to the secondary school, and his brother Alois, his half brother, hadn't made it at that school. He didn't want to. He became a small criminal. He stole some things, went to jail for probably nothing, but he stole some lamps from outside, some electrical lamps, and then he went into jail and didn't go to school anymore. And Hitler didn't like the secondary school. Also, he had to go from his nice house and his friends, which he played Indian and cowboy with, or war games in the woods, and had to go to the city to go to school, and he didn't like it, and he didn't want to become what his father was. He didn't want to work for the government. He wanted to be a painter, and when he said it to his dad, they got into an argument. So it's an interesting period for Hitler, in which he's kind of glad he doesn't have that guy breathing in his neck to go to school, and then his mother says, "You still have to go."
And that school period, because that's one of the things I found really fascinating, is that now we see as Hitler as like probably the most famous person of all time, or at least one of the most famous people of all time.
Uh-huh.
But like, if you go to that period, there are like zero pictures of him, right? There's only like one drawing of one of his classmates that drew him.
Yes, that's actually what happens next is that his mother he goes to school again, he fails, and then the school says you can't stay here. You have to go to another school, and then he goes to his mother still lives in Linz at that time. She moved from Leonding to an apartment in Linz, and he himself goes to another location where he goes to school. That's a very, very nice town, but he's alone there. He can he doesn't like it. He when he doesn't make it either. He can get to the other. I believe he made a test twice, so he could go to the next level. But when he comes back to his mother in Linz, he probably faked sickness, and because he didn't want to go to school anymore, and then he goes back to the place where we talked about in the beginning, where they come from, the little towns in the north of Austria, to heal, and then it's too late to go to school, and then he stays at home, and he comes back to Linz. He walks around in the city, meets a new friend, August, and goes to the theater, tries a little piano playing, but when it doesn't come easy to him, he stops. Well, it's maybe a lot of us have the same. When you don't succeed playing a hard instrument, you quit. But he was convinced that he could make it in music, and with one problem: he couldn't play.
Yes, one of the things August, or what's his name?
Yeah,
Augustus
August. Yeah, Kubizek. Yeah,
Kubizek. His
yes.
name is Kubizek.
Yeah, Kubizek is his last name. August is his first name.
Okay, so because one of the things that you wrote about in your book is that August saw that Hitler wasn't really that driven, as in like he could easily give up with things, right?
Yes.
And he was also like a real good talker. I think we see that later in life too. Like he was a real good talker. Like he could talk about music for hours and hours, but
Mhm.
he never had the discipline to like learn the
No, no,
instrument.
no, no, no. Later on, when he moves to Vienna, he saw it in for real. But in Linz, August worked for his father in the company of his father. He made all kinds of things that you could put on the ground or on the carpets on the wall, and it was hard work. The end of the working day came. Hitler walked towards the place where they had a. We also filmed there with. We made a lot of films in Linz and its surroundings. It's and he went inside, and then he waited for August to quit working. Then they walked. They did long walks around the countryside and the mountains there, small mountains in Linz, and but also go to the theater a lot. Hitler loved Wagner, and the first time he heard it was in the theater in there over there. And there, it's actually we did the tour. We went on the mountain where it happened. There is a play of Wagner, and they went together. And it's so impressive for both of them that they went outside. It's beginning to become dark. They walk to the mountain. They walked on a lot. So, but that night it was already too late to go on the mountain. But they do, and they say nothing because they're so into the music. And then when they're on the mountain, Hitler begins to talk and talk and talk. And August later on doesn't remember what he has said, but he says that's the moment when it started. And later on, when they meet each other, and Hitler is already the boss in Germany, he tells that story to Adolf Hitler. in where the wife of Wagner is. They went to the Festspiele and where Wagner music is played, and his ex-wife is there, and then Hitler says to the woman, "This is where it all started. This is where my politics already started," is what he meant. On a mountain, after a play of Wagner. Don't know if it's true, but it was nice to make the walk and then imagine that the two crazy boys went up and we did a little scene there. I'm grabbing the hands of my friend there like Hitler did, so I'm playing the bad role there. Well, crazy.
But like, why do you think like he got inspired because of Wagner? Like, did Wagner have like the same political ideology, or like why?
Maybe a little. It's about heroism. It's about the someone winning against all odds, and it's also about a real German culture, something. So it's I don't know if Wagner is a real racist, but when you are, you can use it.
Yeah. And one of the things you also mentioned is that the walking thing, right? Like they were both like real big fans of just walking around.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that like a thing Hitler kept on doing throughout his life to find like a little bit of
Yes,
peace?
absolutely. Yeah. They walked. They went everywhere. Where they wanted to see Lynch from all mountains in the area, so they went up and they went to and most of the time they went walking. Later, when they both lived in Vienna, they also took a train to the mountains and took a trip there. Not knowing what what nature was about there, and the weather became bad, and they couldn't find their way back. But also when he was living in Vienna, he walked a lot. When he was in the weekends, when he was the Führer already on the Obersalzberg, he always walked to a point where he could had a nice view on the downstairs and to the on the mountains. So he kept walking,
Okay.
even in the Wolfschanze in Poland. Yeah,
And
what's today Poland?
and you've been there too?
No, that's very stupid. I should go, but I don't know. It's a little bit too close to Russia now. No, I don't know. I don't care. I would go, but it didn't came from it. But you can. There is still a bunker there in that has a roof, and you can spend a night there. So I must do that one time.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down. I'm definitely going there.
Yes, you have to. Yes, you have to. Yeah. And you'll make a lot of pictures and movies, and I want to see it.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, great.
And to understand the friendship a little better, like, could you explain to me, like, what was their friendship like? Do we know anything about that? Was it like, because I can imagine people used to be scared of Hitler, but this is like a little younger, right? So people weren't scared of him, right, at that moment. So it must have been like a quite honest friendship. Like they must have like really liked each other.
Yeah, they liked each other, yes. And later, when they met each other, Hitler was still nice to him. So they had they remembered all stories. And when Hitler knew Hitler when he took over Austria, he came to Linz also. And then August lived in the neighborhood and went to his hotel and said he was downstairs. Hitler came downstairs quite as quick as he could. So and then he said, you go with me upstairs. We can take a few hours to talk, and he did. So they were good friends, and they had the walking thing. They were both into music. They talked about music very passionately. Hitler wanted to go to art school, and he convinced the father and the mother of August to let him go to conservatorium to go to music school. And what happened is that August really went there and did his education, became a piano player, and Hitler wanted to go into art school. He didn't make it. But he said to August that he still went there and he still studied. And that's the end, actually the end of the friendship, because Hitler started lying to him. Before that, it was okay. They talked, they had fantasies. And but I think August looked up to Hitler because he talked a lot. He wrote poetry. He was impressed by that. He could say very well what he thought of Wagner. But it's all theory with him. But that's impressive
Mm-hmm.
for August.
Mm-hmm. And do we
In
know?
fact,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Now, we talked about it last time, like last year. But to me, I kind of forgot about it. Like there's also like theories that they kind of like homosexual relationship.
yeah, there's some hints towards that. Yeah, also in when they are in Vienna, um, there is something August Kubizek describes. They go into the mountains and it starts raining, and then when the raining stops or the raining still goes on, doesn't matter. They go into a farmhouse somewhere in a shed and get warm. And then he describes Hitler in the morning with something around him as a very beautiful guy. Uh, and some people say, well, it looks like it could be that August Kubizek was a little in love with Adolf Hitler.
What do
So
you believe?
I don't know. I don't know, but it could be. I just looked into the relationship of Adolf Hitler and Ernst Röhm. Ernst Röhm, it's we know that he liked men, but Adolf Hitler didn't care about. At first, he didn't care about what Röhm felt for men. And while it was at the same time, you couldn't do it because at that time it was a crime. It's a bit strange that Hitler is okay with it, but that doesn't make him. I have no proof. There's a book about it, and it has a lot of examples and it's very nobody takes it seriously, but it could be. He wouldn't say it if it was.
Because there's also well, that's not a homosexual relation, but a different relationship. His like kind of first crush, right? And this was also around the
Yeah,
time he met August.
yeah.
Stefania, her name is.
Yeah, yeah, it's Stephanie. She lived in Urfahr on the other side of the river. He lived in with his mother then in Linz, and then the both boys are hanging out in the city where the stores are, and then a mother and a beautiful young girl walk past, and Hitler sees her and falls in love. He knows he's going to marry her. It takes weeks and weeks, and without saying anything, always on the same time, there at that spot in the city, looking at Stephanie. And he doesn't. He fantasizes about it. He says, when I go to her and I speak to her, she knows she's going to marry me instantly. So he doesn't have any experience in talking to girls, in talking to this girl, and he only has fantasies, and it doesn't work out. August tries to help him and says to him, you have to approach her and say who you are. And then Hitler says, what do I say? I don't have a job. I don't have education. Can do nothing. So she doesn't. I have to do something. So I have to go to Vienna first and then come back and then ask her to marry me. Well, bit strange because she doesn't know him then. But it's said that when he left Urfahr and went to Vienna, that he wrote her a letter, and she remembered vaguely that she received the letter, but she didn't know after the war who had wrote it. It could be Hitler, but she didn't know. And that's
Okay, so we do know who Stephanie Stefania is. Like we.
yes, it's someone knew found her. So that's so they could ask her, but she didn't know for sure. And I can imagine that she didn't like to talk about it that much because the war was already over, and they knew what had happened, of
Mm-hmm.
course. But that's also the time that Hitler is in Vienna. His mother got sick. Sometimes she was in Linz. She gets she got breast cancer, and she got so sick that she can't go up and down the stairs anymore. She lives in a building on the third or fourth floor, and then they decide to go to the other side of the river in Urfa, where Stephanie lives, and she cried also again 2 houses, so they move around a lot. But when she finally dies, and in the end of 1907, Hitler says that when they went to bury her, that Stephanie opened the door and looked at him as if she knew who he was, but she didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all in his head. And August tells about it, tells that Hitler said such things, but I don't know what was in the head of Adolf Hitler. I'm glad to. But
It seems like he's a little bit like in fantasy world, especially if she doesn't even like remember him. And
yes, I think so. Yeah, and that's what happened. I think.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the fantasy world thingies that I found really interesting in your book was that um he believed like he was gonna win the lottery, right?
Oh yes, yeah. And that's in Urfa, actually. Yeah,
Huh?
yeah. That's a place. It's still there. There's a very new building next to it. And it's a pity, but the old building is still there. They fantasize about it. When they win the lottery, we can rent the entire the entire apartment. It's a very large apartment. Then you can work there. You can make your music. And I have to uh, be on the other side because I will write or I will paint, and I have it must be silent around me. So they have to live apart from each other, but they have enough money because they're going to win the lottery. And Adolf Hitler is absolutely sure. So when he doesn't win, it happens to me every year.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm very angry, but not as angry as Adolf Hitler, because he gets so angry. He knows there is a conspiracy against him. Everybody has done it. The government, no, I don't know, the garbage man. Everybody has done it, and he should have won the money because it's in his head and he wants it. And that's maybe something that remains in his head. He's something in his head and he wants it, so he gets it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it's psychologically a bit thin what I'm saying now, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
I mean, it keeps on reoccurring, like Hitler being in his fantasy land. Like the first, like you got the Stefania thingy, you've got the lottery ticket thingy. Then later in life, there's still this fantasy going on that he actually believes he can win the war. Like it's a constant psychological thing with him.
Because there is a story about someone who wins at when he almost loses everything. Maybe it happens with me too. And well, it didn't happen. He had no chance. We know now because the weapons are different. The odds were completely the other way around,
Yeah.
and had been for more than a year, maybe 2 years. But well, he still fantasized about it, and
And
that's yeah.
mm-hmm. And one of the things that you also wrote about that in Vienna, because he didn't get accepted, right? He didn't get accepted
Oh,
to go into the art class. So he had a little spare time and he spent a lot of time reading, right? Which quite amazed me.
yes, yeah, and that made when he lived, he lived in the same room with August Kubizek for a while, and he was reading all night, and August had to sleep because he had college in the morning, but he was reading and he was getting books from the library, And he kept on doing that his whole life if he had the time, because he had quite a library. And there are also a lot of remarks on the sideline. So we know that he really read it. But he had he described in my conference a special way of reading, that he takes out what he needs, and that's what other people read the book from cover to cover, and that's not a good idea. He thinks you should take out what you need.
Hmm.
So, well, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe you take out the wrong sentences. I don't know, but
But so we actually do have like books that Hitler read, like we still got them. There's still like
yes,
highlights
there
and
are a
stuff.
lot in America. They took them from. They must have taken them from the south. That's his apartment in Munich, and his apartment on the Obersalzberg, because the Americans took over that and taken them to the. You can look. You can ask for them. You can see them. You can hold them. There is a book about the books of Hitler, and that guy that's it's a very interesting book. I believe it's the only one about those books there in America. And he says what's in the sideline, and what he sees, and which books it are, and what's the relation to Hitler and the history. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's always cool to see like famous people and then their books. I think that I recently saw one for Michael Jackson. There was this book that he read. It was about 48 Laws of Power. It's basically a book about manipulation and stuff. And he underlined something and he said, "I'm gonna do this." So it's quite funny to see like famous people actually like reading and then you
Yeah,
can actually buy
yeah,
the book.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Do we
yeah.
know anything about the type of books Hitler read?
Yeah, well, it's been a while since I read it, but it's different types. He was very interested in the military, so about ships and planes and war machines, but also mythology, and some things about Germany he liked, but also art and music. There's a lot of things he found interesting. Some philosophers not too deep, I believe, but no, well, I don't know any names. Nothing comes to mind right now, but I can look it up. Quick.
Thank you. And one of the things you also found really interesting was history, right? Like also like subject at school, like that was his favorite
Yeah, his
subject.
teacher, he liked his teacher very much. So, and he told stories about, also stories about the German element of history. He found very interesting, and he later, when he came back also to Leonding, there's a picture in Leonding near the house where they lived, where his teacher, I believe it was, or his geography, or his teacher of history, he meets them then. He's standing in the car, and the little teacher is standing behind on the ground. So there's a little difference between the two, but there is a picture of both.
Hmm.
So
Why did
he liked history. Yeah,
you like history? What happens after Vienna? He goes to Munich, right?
he's in Vienna. He doesn't have the money anymore to pay his room, so he leaves his room, gets into locations where older people and poor people live together, and he tries to sell paintings of his, simple paintings of Vienna, and earns a little money with that. But he has no money to go to Munich. He wants to go to Munich, but he has no money. He has to wait until a part of the inheritance of the heritage, I have to say,
Inheritance.
yes, it's okay. Then I said it all right. Of his father um, uh, comes his way, and then he has money enough to go to Munich with a friend, rent a room, and go to live there. And what he does there is actually the same of what he did in Vienna. He sells pictures. He paints them and sells them to people. And but it doesn't last long, and he still has a little money of his father. Then the war broke out, and when the war breaks out, he left Austria, also he wanted to leave because he had to go in the army and he didn't want to fight for Austria. But when he is in Germany, he wants to fight for Germany in the Second World War, and that's what he does.
That's
Then he says his room can be rented to someone else. I'm going to Belgium
mm,
at first, northern France, and that's what happens. Yeah, after that, he is there for almost the complete war. He's within a month. He is not fighting anymore, but he is has seen some action. But after that, he brings the post to from yeah, he's a postman in the army. And but it's still he does his work very good. They say so. Um, well, it's interesting because he's very fanatic about it, and he wants to win the war, and the Germans are better, and but he also has a family there. He has no family anymore. His sister is still alive, but there he has a family, and his fighting comrades, and they are well. That's a place where he maybe he liked it in a way.
I could understand like there's like a type of brothership like might create like a little like a new family could be.
Yeah,
During this moment, there's also like the theory that someone saved his life, right? As in, like, there was someone who was pointing a gun, something along the lines of that, and eventually didn't
yeah,
shoot Hitler. Is that a true
yeah.
story?
That's actually not a very nice story for the guy who believed that there is a picture of a guy pointing a gun at someone, at a German, and there is and it actually occurred. There was an Englishman who could have shot someone, but didn't. And then the story came that the German guy was Hitler, and the location of it is known and where it happened. And well, I saw the title of the book, and I started reading. I ordered it, started reading, and I had already sought out where Hitler was during the time the complete First World War. I have I have found where he was, and he had been wounded, and he just came back to his group of soldiers, so to his fighting group, and the British guy was about 100 kilometers away from Hitler. So Hitler had to walk there and then walk back on the same day he came there. So it's impossible. And the writer of the book sold it with the title "The Man Who Didn't Kill Hitler." So he sold a lot of books, I think, but he in the book he is very clear about it. The whole story isn't true. But the guy who didn't shoot Hitler thought it was true.
Okay, but the guy who writes the book, he already said, like, this probably isn't true.
He had about 20 pages of reasons why it's not true. Can't be true. And it's very convincing. And I knew it. I already knew it because I saw that, oh, that's there and he's there. So it can be. And so the story goes. And the guy who did it died with the idea that could have killed Hitler. Well, it's crime.
He probably felt like a lot of guilt.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Well, he didn't know, but it's a strange story. But it happened. Yeah, yeah. Hitler wasn't there.
hmm
No.
I think, like, we've discussed most of his childhood, but is there anything, like, in his childhood that stands out to you and it kind of, like, shows, it, like, a moment that shows that Hitler was maybe gonna be something significant in life? Were there any of those moments?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Probably the other way around. That you say, what a strange fellow. There's nothing about him that that made you think he
No
could.
talent, nothing.
No. Well, he was the way he could speak and convince people. Maybe I don't know. To me, it sounds a bit boring when a guy starts to talk to you and never ends.
Uh,
But maybe I'm doing that right now, but but no, it sounds a bit. But he was very um, convinced of himself. Maybe that's. But there are things I think are very enlightening to read about when you read the history of the young Hitler, especially in Vienna when he walks into the parliament, and the parliament is a parliament of a lot of different countries, a lot of different people, a lot of the Germans, the other people, a lot of different elements, and they make a lot. They argue a lot. So there he thinks, oh, you have to. A democracy doesn't work. That's what he gets there. So you have to have the first thing he does before he's the boss of Germany. The 29th of January 1933, he says he wants to have we call it a noodwet. I don't know what it's called in England, but it's you rule out Parliament and you have all the power temporarily when there is a drama going on, and that's what he says directly when he wants to become. It's not only with the night of the long knives. There it actually happened, but when he isn't in power yet, he already says he wants that. He learned that in Austria the first time, in Vienna, and maybe that's one of the points that he took and made his own.
Okay. There's also one part in the story that I forgot to ask about in the beginning, but his first introduction with the Nazi symbol, it was also when he was younger, right? It was at this church or something along the lines.
Yes, it's in the town of Lambach. That's the town where they went to live behind when they left the farm, and they lived at a water mill, and then they lived in front of the monastery, and there he went to school. Also went to school. He sang in the choir, and they have it's not really a swastika, but it's the same sign. It's like little triangles, and they have been there until now, probably the 2000 years. And now they're gone. They have removed the signs because a lot of people went to see them, and there he probably saw it for the first time. But it's not the actual swastika with the hooks and this stuff. It's a little different, but it's the same sign.
And that's probably where you got like the inspiration from, maybe. We
Probably there's discussion about it. The people now say that it's probably a bit overrated. He saw it, and then he saw something again in the 20s when guys in Munich from the right-wing movement used a real swastika, but he turned it around a bit, made a white circle around it, something red around it, and then it became the Nazi swastika. So I think it's more likely that he was inspired by the Munich variant of that thing, but he already knew it. He could know it.